Israel and Iran have dominated the headlines this week, but the question on everyone's mind, will the United States enter this conflict? White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt gave us this update yesterday.
Regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
So here to break down the political ramifications is our D.C. politics editor, Chris Bedford. So, Chris, when we look at this, we know Donald Trump, he's known for the art of the deal. So what's the best deal that President Trump could get in a scenario that is as complicated as this one is?
You'd be hard pressed to find an Iranian deal that's going to sit well with either the Israelis or Donald Trump, I think, at this point. They're not going to let nuclear inspectors in. They're not going to give up their material. They're not going to deactivate their centrifuges. Those would all be the absolute musts. So what Israel essentially has to do is push Iran's back against the wall so hard that they have an exit that doesn't make them completely and totally lose face. Right now, their demand to the president is, in order for us to even speak with the American envoy in Europe, you need to get the Israelis to stop hitting us, which leaves little room for exit. And this is something that happens so often in modern conflict or any kind of conflict, is people don't deny each other the ability to actually find an off-ramp, or they don't think that off-ramp's actually good enough for them. The president also has an option for at least keeping the United States out of this conflict, which is essentially seeing if Israel's able to do this themselves. And I think that may have something to do with something to do with the 2-week delay we're looking at right now.
Yeah, let's talk more about that, because that has been quietly on the table the entire time. And last time, I believe you were talking about, the fact that everyone's talking about you're going to need possibly commandos to go in there. People are going to have to actually physically be on the ground at some point. You'd need to do that to check to make sure. So, when you say that, it's like, well, okay, they're going to do that. So what does that look like? I mean, does that mean, look, we give you the bombs, you use them, or we give them nothing and they just go in and take care of it, physically?
So you have to be careful with these bombs. And I'm actually have some meetings later this evening with folks who are pretty good at this to try and get at what exactly this operation would look like.
Right.
But the Moab, the bunker busters, which we saw deployed against the Taliban in Trump's first term, it's going to have a different impact against this facility. The Taliban had a bunch of caves in a mountain. It was a major piece of rock, but it's not like it was 100 meters deep, like Mount Cheyenne, reinforced with steel, like you're dealing with right here. The president is not going to want to risk using a bomb like that if there's a chance that it won't even succeed in the first place. You also have to consider the fact of the radioactive spread that it could cause. It's not too far from a major Iranian city and a Muslim holy city. That's something that you have to think about. And at the end of it, just like you said, you're kind of going to need someone on the ground to go in there and make sure it worked. That's a lot more difficult if you put the bomb down there first. Now, it's not easy either way, actually, because nobody really wants to be a commando team like Clint Eastwood were Eagles Dare, fighting their way down into a bunker in hostile territory that's not secured by your own military. That's a brutal fight. But when you're faced with the possibility that this bomb might not even work, that it might cause massive civilian casualties or cancer, who knows what, around the area, it might have lingering effects, that they wouldn't be able to confirm it, and they probably have to send people down there anyways, and that the United States would have to get involved when Israel could potentially do this alone, maybe with the United States helping provide air cover to make sure that those commandos are at least able to get in and do the fighting themselves once in there. That starts to look like an actually real option.
I look at this and I can just tell you the number of people, the number of boomers that have messaged me this week saying like, oh, bunker buster bombs. Like, when are we going to use them? How many? What's the deal? We need to study this. This needs to be studied. We need to put actual federal tax dollars into this because there is something in the water for all the boomers. So we know the people.
Everyone loves bunker busters. It's like 4th of July for people our age. We're no longer impressed with children's fireworks.
They love
them. But this is they're fun. The mother of all bombs.
It is. So
I mean, the Moab, it made an impression, a cultural impression at the time, and that talk made a cultural impression at the time, and it's still sticking around in the public mind. Everyone knows what these are, and probably overestimates the extent of their effectiveness.
So the people on the right, they're definitely going to be talking about what's going on in the Middle East, and all the Democrats are now like, wait a minute. This is our moment. We found it. This is what you wrote about for your Beltway brief. So how real is this opportunity for the Democrats? And my question, because the way that we've been talking about the Democrats on this show, are they even capable of capitalizing on this with all the current chaos that they have going on the left?
So the Republican Party is really exposed. The full belly is showing right now. A worthwhile opponent of any kind could put some serious damage on the GOP's popularity at the moment. You've got the potential war in the Middle East, which is something that both parties have been campaigning against since 2016. And now there might be a new one from the guy who promised that we weren't going to have any more. He didn't say there wouldn't be any more, but he said there certainly wouldn't be any nation building. And that's something that you have to worry about in situations like this. That's a bare spot that they could hit, but they're not really able to because their own activists are lunatics. They're out there screaming Free Palestine, which is, as you've seen online, it's basically Allahu Akbar for people with college loans. They're running congressmen off the road. They're committing all kinds of embarrassing, destructive mistakes and attacks. And it's not like the Democrats have any actual politicians who are capable of lifting this banner. You got Mazie Hirono, one of the most annoying and least impressive members of Congress that I can possibly think of, or Senate, out there. And she focused the entire time talking about the Los Angeles riots when she was talking to the Secretary of Defense. That's not a really good use of the political capital. That's talking about something that the Democrats probably shouldn't be talking about. But then you've also got the big, beautiful bill, which is massive, big. Not all of it is beautiful. There's real vulnerabilities in there. Whenever you need to get an entire agenda of an administration through at one time, in the modern way that we do politics and we govern, essentially, you're going to have so many different add-ons and Frankenstein things that it's sometimes going to have some real weird stuff in there and things that are vulnerabilities for Republicans. Now, the Democrats are looking at the polling and they're saying, well, if we tell people that Republicans are taking away Medicaid, taking away healthcare, and taking away food stamps, well, they hate that. And they do. Americans, like 65% or so, say, no, don't touch that stuff. Now, Americans aren't really paying attention often to the fact that the Medicaid spending that we're doing in this country has ballooned 56.5% in the last 5 years, basically through Joe Biden's administration and COVID, and that a quarter of the American people are currently on Medicaid or some form of it, and that there are tens of thousands of able-bodied working people who self-report playing video games and watching television for over 4 hours a day, who are taking advantage of this program, that there are dead people on this program, that there are illegal aliens in this program. Now, when Republicans poll for those specific measures, which are addressed in the big, beautiful bill, well, I think it's 86% of Americans support removing the deceased from Medicaid rolls, and the other 14% I don't think you're going to reach. Then you've got these other issues are plus 72, plus 80 something. That's as close as you get to all Americans being in agreement on some political issue as there is. The thing is, though, the Republicans' weakness, which I'll talk about much more on Monday, is potentially when they're going after the provider taxes. Problem for Democrats is that's an extremely complicated subject, but what the Democrats will just say is they're taking your health care, which is actually not exactly what they're doing. They're trying to figure out something out that actually makes it so the states stop stealing from the federal government. That's a whole different segment. But there's a lot of different places where Republicans could be attacked. And Democrats have an opportunity here, like Republicans had in 2010, 11, and 12, to define their opponent's signature legislation. Like Republicans did that with Obamacare. But right now, they're tripping over themselves. They can't get over themselves. You got David Hogg over at the DNC being canned, and they couldn't even come up with a good reason. It's like, hey, you basically almost embezzled from the organization and you broke our mission statement. So they blamed it on him being a white male. And then you've got the labor unions, two leaders, Randy Weingarten, the woman responsible for closing down schools for 2 years. She's leaving the DNC. You've got the head of the county, municipal, and state employees union, another major Democratic backer, leaving the DNC. You've got the chairman of the DNC, Ken Martin, crying on phone calls, saying he's absolutely going to fail. There's no way he can do this. Democrats are not poised to take advantage of any of these things in time for the midterms. They're not able to get the money together at the party. All of that's just a major fumble and a completely unforced error for a party that kind of knows what it needs to do in order to fix things. Crazy old James Carville still on TV in his Hawaiian shirts, half drunk at 10 a.m. He says what they need to do, but the activists won't let them. Some of the donors won't let them. And because of that, they're just in this perpetual low-level civil war instead.
Yeah, it's a sight to behold. I have to say, though, if you didn't see it, there is one part of the Republican Party that wants to capitalize on the moment, but also can't, just like the Democrats, and that's the very old school neocons and never Trumpers. I don't know if you saw this, but we should get your quick comment at the end here on Bill Kristol declaring in an article on Twitter that we are all neocons now. I couldn't bear to read the article, but I saw the sentiment, and it did make me laugh because I think the opposite is true.
Bill Kristol is just, you stick around long enough in politics, you become a caricature of yourself. Bill Kristol did that. He peaked too early. He became a caricature of himself too early. I got a friend who, when Donald Trump was elected, who he started to lose his mind a little bit, like a lot of folks in D.C. You know what he did is he left town.
Yeah.
He and his wife traveled. They went around the world. Now they live in a beautiful cabin on a mountainside where he teaches journalism and he occasionally writes profile pieces. He's like the happiest person I know. He doesn't even have a cell phone. When you start to go crazy because of your profession you have chosen, it is time to leave that profession. And I kind of assumed that Bill Kristol might be going crazy when he was visiting. He saw the Bayou Tapestry and a tourism trip in Europe. And he said it strikes him that this is somewhat like Twitter. And I thought, man, log off. You're broken. Just stop. It's over. Sit with your money and just log off.
He comes with the best stories, people. He's big, beautiful Bedford. That's why we have him on the show.